Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Sorry we're a few minutes late. Please be seated. And I trust everyone took a moment to enjoy the First Nations art and read our respect and acknowledgement. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Watt.
Yes. You can. I would like to recommend that the April 29th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be amended by adding item 12.1 regarding police board compensation, council appointment, and that the agenda be approved as amended.
Thank you. Councillor Gambielli.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Question? All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Thanks. Tonight we welcome members of our Environment Committee to present the 2024 work plan. Thank you.
I'm just here to introduce our Environment Committee to present their work plan. So it's presenting tonight is Claudia Vanderborn, who's the chair of the Environment Committee, and Paul Hundle, who's the acting chair.
Thanks very much. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for your willingness to serve our community in this important role. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the general public. With me tonight is Vice Chair Paul Handel and Committee Member Peter Scholefield.
Thank you for joining us.
Other members are Claudia Castro, Alois Gallet, Eva Jordina, and Farhan Umedali. Each member brings valuable expertise and dedication to our shared mission. I would like to extend a special thank you to Heather Keith and Megan Wise for their guidance, hard work, and support since the establishment of our committee, and to Councillor Lambert for his role as our liaison, facilitating communication and collaboration between the committee and Council. The Environment Committee was established in November 2023 with a clear objective to support the district in achieving its climate action and environmental protection goals. Our mandate is to collaborate with Council and staff on initiatives aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, adapting to climate change, and safeguarding our community natural assets. Addressing our climate challenges requires a focused approach, so we have carefully selected key priorities for this year. West Vancouver has aligned its carbon reduction targets with those set by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, as outlined in our official community plan. These targets include a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and achieving net zero emissions by 2015, relative to 2010 levels. Despite efforts, emissions have plateaued since 2010, necessitating urgent action. To achieve the 45% reduction over the next 5 years requires concerted effort, equivalent to reducing emissions by approximately 6.43% annually, totaling 17,329 tons CO2 equivalent per year. To drive progress, we have identified key themes in energy, active transportation, and conservation to focus on ensuring repetition, stickiness, and implementation around these priorities. First priority is energy efficiency and retrofits. To address greenhouse reduction targets, we are focusing on education, advocacy, and action in the field of energy efficiency and retrofits. We will dive deeper into the initiatives on the next slides. According to Corporate Knights, for someone living in BC, where the grid is almost entirely hydro, switching from natural gas to a heat pump will save $123 in annual savings for the average house and a 63% reduction to the average household annual greenhouse gas emissions. So here in West Vancouver, we have a target of around 10,000 homes. Achieving the 45% reduction necessitates the annual adoptions of heat pumps by 642 homes. So there are approximately 80 new build homes per year, which will fall under the STEP Code 4 standards. There are on average 250 renovations annually, creating potential for more than 125 homes to install heat pumps. And then finally, there's the opportunity to encourage 400 homeowners toward heat pump adoption annually. The Jump on a Heat Pump program processed 49 registrations between March and December 2023, with 7 originating from West Vancouver. We are collaborating with staff to estimate heat pump installations from 2021 onwards for accurate tracking and measurement. So moving forward, let's look at the actions. A heat pump survey was launched last Friday. I hope you all gonna participate. Education and outreach initiatives will address barriers to heat pump adoption using survey insights. A sticker will remind residents to consider heat pumps during gas furnace replacements. Financial strategies include exploring financing options, renting and leasing programs, and incentives. Low carbon installations can be incentivized through renovation permits, eco-sustainability fast-track options, and fee reductions. And also assessing the energy efficiency of district-owned buildings and developing enhancement plans. Engagement with the permit department will be in our June meeting and will focus on discussing permits, renovations, heat pumps, building code compliance, and incentivizing low-carbon installations. Next priority, active transportation. It is another key priority for the committee. The upcoming committee meeting next Tuesday will be dedicated to focusing on solutions and facilitating positive action in this area. This slide recaps a little bit the reasons and challenges of active transportation. But let's look a little bit at where the Environment Committee can support. Biking and walking in West Vancouver. We will support the Go by Bike Week. We would like to arrange e-bike test rides and look at updated bike route maps. We want to educate residents on the district's e-bike pilot program. We want to explore for more dedicated bike lanes to encourage cycling. We would like to identify transit stops and key destinations where bike racks can be installed to facilitate bike-to-transit trips. Look into sidewalks at strategic locations and explore more 30 km/h speed limits on designated bike routes. Speed limits increase bike safety, reduce CO2 emissions, reduce idle times, gasoline consumption and noise, and improves air quality. Let's look at public transportation. Offering discounted or free transit passes to residents, students, seniors, or low-income individuals can make public transportation more affordable and accessible. Potentially supported by initiatives such as free transit days, pending further financial analysis to assess the associated cost. With regards to EVs, inquire with EV charging providers about setting up additional fast charging stations. Organize an EV test driving event with discounts. Then on the idling. An average vehicle idling for 10 minutes burns over 1 cup of fuel, and this produces about 700 grams of CO2. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but if on average every day around schools, ferry terminals, and construction sites in West Vancouver, at least 1,000 cars idle for 10 minutes, this represents 250 tons CO2 equivalent annually, which can be reduced by better visibility and signs in the community of our no idling bylaw. Finally, a school car pool app is currently being tested in one of the West Vancouver schools for teachers and parents to use. If successful, this can be implemented in other schools. Next, natural assets. The Environment Committee will advance projects to protect and enhance community natural assets. Some of the actions will be to support the Urban Forest Management Plan goals, partner with local schools and community groups for Adopt a Tree, Adopt a Street, or park programs, support the district-led Plant a Tree initiative with the local schools, and coordinate community invasive species removal events. More initiatives and ideas may come forward during this year when we have a meeting with Parks Department. Wildfire. Wildfire risk is a growing concern for the District of West Vancouver. The costs associated with wildfire prevention, management and restorations are substantial. Determining the most effective response strategy is essential, requiring a comprehensive approach that covers education, communication, regulation and enforcement, better equip the fire departments, improve the capability to rapidly detect, manage and communicate the location of wildfire using new technologies, implementing wildfire reduction measures where effectiveness has been established. In light of the importance of fuel reduction initiatives in interface areas and around critical infrastructures, the Environment Committee acknowledges the significance of the Eagle Lake Fuel Reduction Program. After extensive discussion, examination, and thorough research, including the review of publications assessing the effectiveness of such programs, as well as considering its location in an already restricted area and its substantial budget allocation, the Environment Committee remains inconclusive about the program and highlights the importance of developing a more comprehensive wildfire strategy. We suggest the Mayor and Council to review the complete motion passed by the Environment Committee, available in the minutes of our last meeting. Finally, future considerations, collaborate on future and longer-term projects, enhance engagement with local school on conservation and support student-led environment councils, provide residents with information on reducing their carbon footprint and conserving nature, review proposed implementation policies and programs related to environment and climate targets, and finally recommend budget allocation for 2024 actions to Mayor and Council as needed through staff. In conclusion, while we have identified and developed solutions to address our environmental challenges, it is imperative that we expedite their implementation and allocate the necessary resources to ensure their success. Time is of the essence, and decisive action is needed to meet our climate and sustainability goals. Let us harness our collective efforts and commitment to accelerate progress towards a more resilient and sustainable future for our community. Together we can make a difference in safeguarding our environment and enhancing the well-being of current and future generations. Thank you.
Ms. Vanderboom, thank you so much. Beautiful presentation. Councillor Lambert. Well, I think so, and then if there are any questions or discussion, let's get the motion of thanks on the floor, and then let's ask members of council if they'd like to discuss it.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recommend that the Environment Committee 2024 work plan attached as Appendix A to the April 15th, 2024 report from the Climate Action Coordinator be approved.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Discussion, Councillor Snyder.
Yes, thank you. A very informative report. Thank you for that. My question is probably for Ms. Keith. What is the provincial grant right now incentive currently available for heat pumps?
Through the mayor to Councillor Snyder, right now the UBC rebates you need.
Yeah.
So it's all you can get up to $6,000. And just an update from when this work plan was approved by the committee is that the federal Greener Homes program was reestablished in the new federal budget. So that's actually going to be up and going again. That's an additional $5,000 that you can receive. So that was on hold for a while because they ran out of funding, and then it was just renewed. So.
And I know that the district ourselves did a top-up program as well. If I recall correctly, that's expired. Is that correct?
No, we continue to do top-ups. We changed from doing top-ups directly on heat pumps to now doing top-ups on electric service upgrades as well as hot water heat pumps. So we continue that program in addition to the Jump on a Heat Pump program.
Okay, thank you.
Do we post those links for the provincial and federal programs on our website? Is there somewhere people here this evening could go, oh, I want to do that?
To the mayor, we just actually recently updated our Jump on a Heat Pump program webpage. It provides new updated information about our expanded services as well as links to all of the possible rebates as well as the 0% financing loans that you can also apply for. So it's all on one page.
Great, thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
So I got a couple questions and then some comments, but I'll make the comments later, maybe?
No, yeah, I think either way.
Okay, so I just didn't hear the last part about the wildfire motion. Could you just say what you said again? You said that council can see the motion somewhere, and then I couldn't hear what you said.
We analyzed the Eagle Lake Fuel Reduction Program, and we have spent quite some time discussing that, and we looked at research. We looked at some publications, checking the effectiveness of the program. We looked at the budget. We looked at the fact that it was a restricted area already. And the Environment Committee just as a whole remained a little bit inconclusive about the program, and we emphasizes the importance of a more overall wildfire strategy. We were inclusive about the effectiveness of such a program.
Okay, because we've already approved the budget for that event. So where are we at with that? Maybe I should ask staff just on that point. Do we have to
Ms. Keith?
approve something else again, or?
Through the mayor to Councillor Gambioli, the budget for the fuel treatment work plan for 2024 was approved on April 8th, I believe. The Environment Committee passed their motion on April 9th. The Environment Committee passed their motion on April 9th. You'll be able to review it in the meeting minutes that will be finalized at the next committee meeting next Tuesday. So as of right now, staff have the direction to proceed with the work, with the budget approval. So that's in our current plan to begin the work next fall after the birding season, but it does take quite a bit of time to prepare for it as well as apply for the grant applications. Should council want to change their decision, they would have to direct staff in a different direction.
Okay, so it's up to us to read the recommendation from the committee and then to discuss it or bring it to a public council meeting to discuss that allocation of the budget, right?
I think if we could
Correct.
circulate those minutes so that members of council read it, and then if anyone wished to ask for a motion of reconsideration, we could bring that back to a future public meeting, yes.
Okay, so even if they're just draft minutes for now? Or, yeah, that's not going to hurt anyway, just sooner than later, I'd like to know what the recommendation is. I haven't seen it. And I understand that we're advertising for new members of the committee.
Yes.
So, this is your chance to tell people. I think
Look
the
around and pick out some more volunteers.
I think the deadline's
Yes.
tomorrow, though.
We need volunteers, even if they're not necessarily part of the committee, but we hope to have more people helping us at different events, at all the different actions that we would like to undertake. Yes.
Okay. So I will just say a few things then, so that I don't have to say them later. So first of all, thank you. This really looks like some energy on the topic, which we've been hoping for a long time, and we haven't invested a lot in this area. And we have great staff, but we don't have very many of them on this topic, and or on all these topics. So it's great to have the committee with their energy and enthusiasm and working on all these different areas, because there's so many. So thank you to everyone on the committee who's been working so hard, I know. For me, in terms of mitigation, it's become very, very clear that we do need this mobilization around the heat pumps, and 400 a year is a huge task. And every day that goes by that we don't have more people switching to heat pumps, that number 400 goes up. And it's a big task. So, I'd be happy to help, and I 100% support this part of your work plan. So I'm hoping we, if it's necessary, can put more resources into it. And, you've got some great ideas. So I really think that's very, very important. And I know a lot of members of the community feel the same way. The same for active transportation. I'd love to know who is creating that carpool app. Because one of the schools...
It's Mulgrave School,
Okay.
and they're testing it right now. So they
Okay.
have it very successfully running for the staff and
Okay.
teachers. And they have expanded to parents, and now we are testing to see how is the uptake, because that is a big part of our problem, is that so many parents drive still to school.
Yep. So would love to connect with you offline on that, because I'm closely involved with one of the high schools as well, and we've been trying to figure out how to do that. So that would be amazing if that could be shared. That would really be significant. In terms of the active transportation, the mobilization for the heat pumps, the issues with wildfires, I mean, personally, I will agree to vote to allocate resources to whatever this committee recommends. So I would love you to come forward, and I personally vow to support what you're doing, and I hope that the majority of my colleagues agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, hi. I have a question probably for Ms. Keith, and I'm just, so as we're being told or forced to further densify and we're trying to reduce our emissions, I'm trying to determine, so we want to reduce by 6% a year right now, because when you look at the provincial averages in 2007, we were producing 64.46 million tons, and and currently we're at 64.76 tons. So there's been less than a percentage decrease in all those years. So are we being realistic? And not that I don't think that it's a wonderful goal, but I'm just trying to determine whether it's even doable. And also given that we have some of the lowest emissions, not just in the province, but the country. How do we do this while we keep building?
Ms. Keith?
Through the mayor to Councillor Watt. Well, I mean, we are continuing to build, but the new buildings are going to be to a level of energy efficiency with heat pumps that will have lower emissions despite potentially increasing population growth. So the new buildings will be low carbon anyways. and they are incredibly ambitious targets. I think you could go all the way up to every level of government and acknowledge that there are incredibly ambitious targets. I think the difference between maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago and now is that people are more supportive and readily working towards achieving and making a change in their lives and reducing their carbon footprint. So there's more awareness, but it's going to be difficult. But I think the more, as even we've seen, as Ms. Vandervoorn indicated, we launched a heating and cooling survey, home survey last Friday to get an understanding from West Vancouver residents, how they feel about switching to heat pumps in their home, what are the barriers, what are the challenges, because as we acknowledged, it's a very low uptake on the Jump on a Heat Pump program in West Vancouver versus District and City of North Vancouver, and so we're trying to understand why. And even some of the feedback we received just this weekend, there's a lot of myths and untruths that are being spread around heat pumps and lack of information or knowledge about it, and wondering, everything from how is BC going to expand their capacity to accommodate all this. And so I think if anything that we can do is just continue to work with the committee to spread the awareness and provide education and really speak to these people to sort of debunk these myths and help people to move towards where they need to be. But I do acknowledge that these targets they're ambitious, for sure.
Yeah. One thing, if we want to get people out of cars, the e-bike program is fantastic. I own one. I love it. But when I go to other cities, I find with the Lime scooters, I would love to see that program here. They're much less cumbersome. I think probably less accident prone. And I think if we had those, people might be more inclined to take a bus to Ambleside, hop on a scooter, do their business around there. They're just not as unwieldy or heavy as the large e-bike. So those are my personal thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor Cassidy, I don't think she's jumping on a scooter. I thought I saw a little head
Who, me?
shake there. Yes, you.
Well, I tend to live in the world, a different world, which might be called reality. And most people who live in West Vancouver, we've heard an inordinate number of times that we have a disproportionate percentage of our population that are elderly. And I don't really necessarily see elderly people getting on a bus, which could potentially take them all the way to Park Royal, but getting off at 25th so they can get on an e-bike, so they can complete their trip to Park Royal. But most importantly, there is the fear factor of giving in our speeding cars, which we don't seem to be able to control along Marine Drive, the fact that they might actually be severely injured. So anyway, I don't dissuade anybody, obviously, from doing so, but I don't hear anybody that I associate with planning on doing their transportation by e-bike. But then I live in a community where I'm a 15-minute person. I walk most of the places that I go. If I go out to dinner, I go out to get my hair, whatever, I walk. So and I purposely made that decision in my life that I was going to get as close to facilities as humanly possible, because I grew up out in the boonies and I had no desire to continue that type of existence. So, but anyway, my questions are, number one, why are contractors dissuading people from installing heat pumps?
That's an interesting question. I think
That's in one of your points.
But actually, the person we should ask is, I think Councillor Snyder installed a heat pump, and I think actually talking to somebody that put one in might be the best thing we could do to share your experience.
What can I say? My bills went down significantly. I have a home that is cooled in the summertime, and it's been great. And the access to the incentive programs, both the the District of West Vancouver and provincial, they were quite significant as far as helping with costs. So.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not debating the benefits. My question was, why are contractors, it's in your literature, dissuading people from installing them? What is the rationale behind their
Ms.
point?
Vondervan?
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Cassidy. Personally, I mean, I've had several contractors at my home. I'm testing, and 4 out of 5 actually told me not to install. It
Right.
was too complex. We had to add electricity outside. They didn't know if the existing duct system was good enough. So there are, and we hear that often. This is not only my personal experience. I hear it often when I talk about heat pumps with other people. And there has been, the city of Langley has done also a survey specific to the contractors. Some of that feedback is interesting to come here and to look into that. Personally, I think there is an incentive, a big incentive from Fortis BC to actually keep them on gas furnaces.
Okay. So I guess the argument may conceivably be that there are preferred operators who would not be dissuading somebody from installing that heat pump. They would actually be working their way, mentally speaking, for that purchaser to proceed accordingly to achieve their end objective.
Through the mayor to...
That perhaps there should be a list of preferred operators who are prepared to assist the client through the process, and rather than dissuading them from doing so.
There is a list on the grant website from BC. And even Jompernon heat pump really helps with the quotes and with installers for heat pumps. Personally, if we have the time and the resources, I would love to even organize an event with all the contractors, something very social, more social, and really have an open discussion. And really see how we can motivate them that West Vancouver is, if you install in West Vancouver, you are pro heat pumps.
Okay, and thank you. Now, one of the things I've heard about heat pumps is they're very noisy.
Through the mayor to Councillor Cassidy, the latest models actually are below 50 decibels, which is actually not
like a
very
hum,
noisy.
just a hum.
Yeah, a very, very slow hum, and that is one of that myth, indeed, that when we look at the latest models, they are not that noisy anymore.
Councillor Cassidy, what do you
Okay.
say? Or Councillor Snyder, what do you say to Councillor Cassidy on that one?
Be outside in the garden and I can't hear it, and literally I'm 10, 15 feet away from it, so it's
Okay.
very quiet.
Good. I'm just hearing what I'm hearing and repeating it, so the answer is in a wider form. Now, my next question is, who's going to pay for these free transit passes?
Oh, I think that was just a recommendation.
It
That would
is.
have to go through Translate.
No, I
That's-
comprehend that, but when you make a recommendation, you have to look through the entire process to a conclusion. So the conclusion is, who would you contemplate is going to pay for these free transit passes?
Through the mayor to Councillor Cassidy. So this is indeed an idea for the time being, and I did mention here that we would like first to assess the cost associated to such programs before taking that any further.
Okay, because as I said, it is something conceivably councils, in the plural, could take to the higher authorities, the UBCM or so forth, and have our federal, provincial government of whomever, transit whomever, buy into the equation. So you've heard of, obviously, the concept of a walking school bus. Have you had any conversations with the schools that these children are dropped off 3 or 4 or 5 blocks away from the school and actually walk to school?
Through the mayor to Councillor Cassidy, not really, not yet. So that is something that we can pursue. I don't know if Heather has any further information on that.
Not at this point. I mean, I think Ms. Mahler's team and engineering and transportation would have better understanding of that. I do know that at our environment committee meeting next Tuesday night is entirely focused on active transportation, and staff from our Roads and Transportation Department will be coming to speak with the Environment Committee to help us implement or plan that component of their work plan. So good thing to bring up, and we can discuss it at the meeting next week.
Because it would be very good to be speaking to school boards about this, because any of us who've had children in the school system have seen the crowds and the lineups to drop off one's precious child, whereas in days of old there was the bus, or there you've got 2 good feet. So, but anyway, my very last point, it's unfortunate this wildfire management program came before us, before council on the 8th, and you didn't see it till the 9th. So perhaps next time we could coordinate our programming. But anyway, thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. I'm glad to see Councillor Gambioli put her light on, but it's Councillor Watt first, because I thought you'd have a thought or two on the schools. Thank you, Councillor Watt.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I think one of the barriers people find to heat pumps is the overall outlay, and they can be rented. There are companies that do that. They specialize in it, and it's a fairly low monthly cost with huge incentives.
Thank you. And Councillor Gambioli?
Yeah, so you're right. On that note, it's a great idea. I suggest that you make a presentation to the school board. They only meet once a month, but I really think they would love to hear from you on the active transportation issue, on the tree planting issue, and on that school app carpooling issue. Those are the 3 that I've just read, but maybe there's other things you can think of. But that's what I mean. Yeah. So anyway, just think about that. Get yourself in line for those school board. Like I said, they only meet once a month, so you have to get your your ducks in a row for that. But that's a great opportunity, I would say.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Seeing no further discussion. We've got somebody who wants to speak to the item.
That's correct, Mayor Sager. We have one, member of the public sign up to speak to this item.
I'm going to say thank you to you two. We're going to clear the space for members of the public. Thank you so much.
Nick Tsangarakis.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Nick Tsangarakis, and I'm a resident of West Vancouver. I live on 17th Street, and I want to thank the Environmental Committee for the work that they've done so far. I endorse the plan, the working plan. I think it's great, and we've recently built a new house. And can attest, and we've equipped the home with an HVAC system, heat pump, and can attest to some of the benefits that Councillor Schneider spoke about, energy efficiency savings, temperature regulation, just the sense that the air being circulated is being cleaned, and so love this direction, and we'd like to just underscore it. In addition, and with your permission, Mayor and Council, I'd like to just touch on another component of the work plan, and that is
of course
the Urban Forest Management Plan. And before I talk to this, just a very quick preface. I served as the chair of the urban, the bylaw working committee. And we spent 18 months grappling with this issue of our trees and our urban environment. More specifically, I want to talk to the direction that you provided staff at one of your recent council meetings, and that is to do additional consultation as it relates to some of the recommendations in the Urban Forest Management Plan. I've brought a little can here just to sort of evoke the metaphor of kicking the can down the line. I promise you that it's just a metaphor. I'm not going to do it.
We're not going to actually do it.
I'm not going to do it physically. That would be far too dramatic. if I may just provide you with a little bit of context and history and a sense of a timeline, 2015 was when our community began to grapple with this issue of our urban forest in earnest. And since then, there have been 23 engagement activities. This, Mayor and Council, is not hyperbole. It is a fact. And what I'd like to do tomorrow is send you an email with a list of the various engagement activities and tasks that have happened over all these years. So my question to you, and maybe this is a rhetorical question, is how might we benefit from yet another round of consultation, which was the direction that you gave staff at a recent meeting, as I've touched on.
That's time, sir.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, they,
May I just...
yeah, absolutely, finish. And I would encourage you to send us that list. I think that's a
certainly-
very smart idea.
I certainly will. A related question is, is this the best way to deploy and align the resources, limited resources that we have in the district? Mayor and Council, we know what the problem is. We came to the conclusion, as did the protagonists that drove the urban forest management plan, and that is clear cutting on development lots. We also know what the solution is. We came to this conclusion, as did the folk that drove the urban forest management plan along. The solution is to introduce a bylaw that attempts to protect trees on lots that are being developed on new homes, and where that's not possible, and of course sometimes this is not possible, is to ensure that there are replacement trees.
Right.
So we know the problem, we know the solution, and the final point I'll make is please consider requesting staff to take some action to stop the proverbial can being kicked down the line. Take some action. Please request staff to come back to you with an implementation plan as it relates to this recommendation of implementing a bylaw that would protect our trees on development lots, and that's where I'll leave it. Thank you very much.
Well, we're grateful for your service to the community. Thank you, and just promise me you'll recycle the tin.
I will indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much for the extension of time as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Prosnick is wishing to speak, and I know you'll respect the. Thank you.
Do I get 10 minutes? 3.
10
Okay, I will give you a very personal example of what to avoid on heat pumps. I have one as well. I'm very happy with it, but we had a lot of pain. Anyway, I commend the committee on many of the recommendations. I'm a person that's already has a heat pump, but there's a big elephant missing in the room on your plan. And the mayor and council know what it is, and that's why there's been a lot of action in the past where no action is because we don't have any money. And we don't have any money in the municipality because the money comes from development. And we've only developed 1/6 of the housing that the rest of Metro has developed.
Mr. Prosnick, you have to speak into the mic so everyone can hear you.
We're missing the money from the lack of development. And we know we need affordable housing. So I think that's the engine that drives environment,
That's
because you have, with development will come the transportation route to get the cars off the roads. And I am by the high school and the elementary school on Mathers, and there are hundreds of cars every day, twice a day, and we need to build, when we build the schools, we should have development around those schools so we can walk, bicycle paths, and all those things. But if we don't develop, we don't have the money to do any of this stuff, we don't have the money to do the transportation and implement the environmentally friendly building codes, etc. So it's the engine in municipalities that's produced the money for all of this. So I really encourage your committee to tie this back to the enabler, which is development monies that can be done.
Mr. Prosnick, sorry,
Okay.
my colleagues here have asked you to address us.
Okay, sorry. And the other thing I'd say about heat pumps is when you go for the grants, you have to get an audit done of your house. So they assess all the leakage. And so what they come in is they set up a vacuum and they suck the air out to see where the leaks are. And this is what we did last summer. And then they give you a report. And then after you put the heat pump in, they come and do it again to see whether or not it's working, right? Well, the problem with the person that we had, a very reputable firm, et cetera, and there's about 1,000 kind of, choices you make, and you have to choose somebody with a, close telephone code. He forgot to close the dampers in 2 of our fireplaces. So he sucked all of the carbon from the dampers, probably for 20 years, at their gas fireplaces, into our house. $20,000 later to clean basically our living room, dining room, den, and it was curtains, you name it. We had 3-4 couches. If you had to replace those, it would have been another $20,000. So I just encourage you to know that that's what they do. Please go check the dampers to make sure they're closed. Luckily,
that's a great little warning, and thank you very much. Must have been nice couches. I'm going to, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary? Thank you again. Thank you very much. And we'll now move to item number 5. Councillor Snyder.
Yes, thank you. I know there's going to be
have
a presentation to be provided here. The only thing that I will, well, do you want me to wait until the presentation then?
Sure, we'll turn it over. Mr. Hawkins, are you doing the presentation on this, or Mr. Bailey?
Mr. Hawkins.
Mr. Hawkins, thanks for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council and members of the community. So yes, this item relates to the Provincial Housing Bill 44, small-scale multi-unit housing. So I'll break it into 4 pieces. This is obviously a new piece of legislation. So I'll describe it in a first part and what it means for West Vancouver. Second part, I will summarise the proposed zoning amendments in order to comply with the new provincial legislation. Third part, I'll discuss exemptions and an exemption request, and I'll conclude with the next steps and recommendation. So in terms of the legislation, I want to begin by acknowledging that it's just one part of a suite of many provincial bills. There's been many media releases, commentary, associated public questions, and so on. So I'm going to briefly aim to orient folks through what different bills have in common is housing, but what they mean and what they require West Vancouver to do is different in each case. So the first bill that came was announced was West Van was one of the first 10 municipalities to be issued housing targets. This will require staff reporting back in 6 months, the 6-month report, very shortly in May, which will be followed by 5 annual reports. The second bill, 44, is the small-scale multi-unit housing. This requires 3 things of West Vancouver. Immediately to update our zoning to accommodate small-scale forms of housing in restricted zones by June, but also by December this year to update our housing needs report with a 20-year growth figure, and then by the end of next year to update our OCP and zoning bylaws to reflect that new growth figure. The third bill, 46, related to development financing. This will allow West Vancouver to update our development fees to reflect that new housing growth 20-year figure to ensure development pays for itself. And the fourth and final bill, 47, regarded transit-oriented development, and at time of speaking, this is not currently applicable to West Vancouver. So I just wanted to orient folks, because we've certainly had a lot of questions, and staff accordingly will be coming back to council as we report back on various requirements. But in topic tonight is only one piece of this, and it is the update to zoning to accommodate the requirements for small-scale multi-unit housing. So digging deeper into that specific piece of the legislation, so Bill 44 did amend the Local Government Act, so it applies to all local governments within the province. It does a number of things. Primarily, it requires zoning amendments to permit forms of housing within specified zones, which I will speak to. It also identifies exemption criteria, so such as very large lots, over 4,000 square meters, lots that do not have water or sewer connections that would be exempt from the criteria from the legislation. It also prohibits the use of other planning tools that would unreasonably prohibit or prevent the achievement of the forms of housing. So, for example, we cannot introduce new development permit controls or dedicate large areas as conservation areas for heritage purposes to avoid compliance. Fourth point, important procedural one, council cannot hold a public hearing on the zoning amendment. That's explicitly prohibited within the legislation, but we will be providing public notice. And then fifth point, there is a hard deadline of June 30th to comply, and there are consequences for non-compliance. So in terms of what this means for West Vancouver, two overarching questions: where would it apply, or where does it apply rather, and how many units would be required? So the first step, within the legislation, it identifies the places where the legislation applies are referred to as restricted zones. So the province has restricted the application of this bill to the following categories of areas: where single family without suite is permitted, where a single family with only one suite, be that attached, so a basement suite, or detached, a coach house is permitted, so only one suite, duplexes where no suites are permitted, and duplexes with suites in some instances. The second question is how many units would be required, and this is determined by both the size of the parcel and its distance or proximity to frequent transit. And in West Vancouver, that refers to the Marine Drive corridor as far as 25th. So in terms of the 3-unit requirement, it's for relatively small parcels, smaller than 280 square meters. For parcels that are larger than that size and more than 400 meters from the frequent transit network, it would be 4 units. And then for parcels that meet that size and are within or closer than 400 meters to frequent transit, the requirement is for 6 units per lot, with no ability to establish parking requirements. A key point I want to make based on this review of the legislation is that the vast majority of the district is not impacted by this legislation. The vast majority of our single detached zones, so RS1 through 5, and RS7 through 10, they already allow both basement suites and coach houses, so they do not meet the definition of a restricted zone. If you look at the top bullet points, it applies to single families zones without a suite or with only one suite. So for the majority of our zones, they allow 2 suites, both a basement suite and a coach house, so therefore they're not impacted. What that means at a high level, looking at a map, is that this is a relatively small impact on the district in terms of the number of lots. So if you're in green, if you're looking at green, it's a park, so it's obviously not relevant. If it's white, it may have residential uses, but it's not impacted by the legislation. So we're really only talking about the colored parcels, and I recognize the legend is small, so I will have some closer up maps, but the point I'm trying to make at this point is purely that it's relatively low impact, and in fact around 1.6% of West Vancouver's residential areas. So moving on to the proposed zoning amendments to meet compliance. Staff had a number of objectives in our recommended approach to council. The first, we are creatures of the province. Land use planning is governed by the Local Government Act, so obviously the primary objective is to ensure compliance. The second point, in terms of how we meet compliance, we've tried to do so in a way that allows options should owners wish to achieve the required unit densities, and the conditional tense is very intentional. There's no requirement when you change zoning for an owner to meet that new zoning. There's nothing that requires owners to tear down their existing house, for example, but should they wish to redevelop, we've identified a number of pathways to do so. So that could be through coach houses, infill, or ground-oriented options such as multiplexes. Third part, we've sought to establish site standards that reflect and consider a number of things. So where we have district-wide standards, so for example, where we can require parking for the 3 and 4 unit density requirements, we've simply reflected well-established district standards. For the impacted areas, we've looked at what surrounds them, and where we can, we've imported neighbouring zone provisions. So if there's an established streetscape, for example, we've reflected the setback requirements. We've also looked at the existing regulations for the impacted sites, and again, try to respect what was previously in place. An example would be land use contract sites that in some instances have very specific intentions, which we've recaptured while meeting compliance with the new provincial legislation. And we've also considered the provincial policy manual, which the province prepared to accompany the legislation. An example would be there's a big focus on different forms of ownership, so we have managed internal lot lines to enable things like fee simple row housing, so row housing where you would not need to pay a strata fee should an owner wish to go that route through a redevelopment. And the fourth point, and this ties back to the first one in terms of ensuring compliance, staff are not introducing any regulations that would or could be deemed to unreasonably restrict the ability of an owner to achieve these unit requirements. So moving on to the close-up map, so there is only one location that meets the criteria because they have very small strata site areas within this site, CD80 on Mathers. This is required to move to the 3-unit density. There are more areas required to move to the 4-unit per lot density. So left of screen, west of the district, Imperial and Marine CD82. That's the larger portion in red, and then the smaller portion on the left-hand side is the former fire hall overlooking Horseshoe Bay at Nelson and Marine. The second image is Parthenon Place and 5490 Marine Drive, also on the western edge of the district. The third image, 25th and Marine, a single lot CD48. And on the right of screen, this is east of Taylorwood Place, roughly midway between Marine Drive and Highway 1. Then the final series of changes, this is for the 6-unit density requirement. So as mentioned, this is really to do with proximity to transit along Marine Drive. So there's a range of zones that are required to be changed to meet compliance. The first two addresses underneath the map are CU3 zones. They're more commonly known as the Masonic or the former Masonic Lodge and the existing Legion. So because they do permit single family and or duplex uses, they do have to move to a 6-unit allowance. CU5, Council will recognise the address 1768 Argyle is Navvy Jack. And this is a good example of a point I made earlier that nothing forces an owner to respond to these zoning changes. So in this instance, Council is effectively, as the elected officials, the owner of this site, and Council is pursuing a very different vision of heritage preservation with a combined restaurant use. So there's nothing in this zoning change that prevents Council from continuing with that process. The majority of the sites shown in orange on this map are RD1 and RD3, so duplex zones, which currently at 4 units need to move to 6 units. And then those in yellow are the RM1 zones, which are actually an apartment zone, but because single family is still a permitted use, it's purely a technical change we need to make. Obviously, it's moot. No one's going to tear down an apartment to replace it with a sixplex. But again, to stay on side with the legislative requirements, it is a change we need to make. So in terms of exemptions and a specific exemption request, there are 2 sites which do meet the province's definition within the legislation of a restricted zone, but they also meet the same legislation's criteria for exemption. On the left of screen at Wellington and Nelson, this is a very large lot, so it is exempt on that basis. This is more commonly known as Tyee Point or Telegraph Hill or Madrona Ridge. And then on the right of screen, Parry Island, which lies just west of Eagle Island. Again, it has residential use permission, but it does not have municipal water or sewage connections, so these 2 sites are exempt. And then staying in the area of Parry Island, Eagle Island and Abode Island, staff will be submitting an exemption request. To be clear, there is no criteria within the legislation that allows for exemption. For example, they're not very large lots. They do have water and sewage connection. However, staff feel that this is perhaps an example of an unintended consequence of provincial-wide legislation that perhaps doesn't acknowledge particular local issues. So in this case, the short version obviously is that it's an island. So that, there are different implications from moving from a 1 unit per lot to 4 units a lot, which is what would be required if we do not receive an exemption being granted our way. It'd be 4 times as many boats for access and moorage. There are different engineering implications for getting water to an island and getting wastewater and solid waste off an island. Environmentally, obviously, by definition, it's a marine environment, it's a foreshore environment, it's a coastal environment. We're here as planners, but we have colleagues in fire, police, ambulance services, and so on. It is a different proposition to provide emergency services to an island. And then finally, there's a particular question mark around the ability for parking capacity. So in conclusion, regarding next steps and staff's recommendation, as mentioned, we will be submitting that exemption request by the deadline of June the 1st. We'll certainly make the case, but it is for the Ministry of Housing to determine. If our request is rejected, we would have 90 days to amend the relevant zone to comply with the 4-unit requirement. So obviously staff would report back to Council should we need to on that. And then more broadly, there is a new process that this legislation requires for Council's zoning adoption. As mentioned, public hearings are prohibited, so the decision in front of Council tonight is actually asking Council to set the date to commence bylaw consideration so that we can still provide public notice. We're recommending May 27th for that, where Council could give first, second and third readings. Although these changes are being driven by the Ministry of Housing, we still require Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure approval. So the May 27th date would allow that referral and then come back to Council at the last meeting in June, I believe, is June 24th, which would be in time for the June 30th provincial deadline for Council to provide fourth reading and adoption, and then staff could submit the amended zoning bylaw to the province in July. And as mentioned, there is ministerial prerogative has been reserved within the legislation, so the Minister of Housing, should they deem us not to have complied or should the deadline not be met, then they do have the ability to make an order and in fact force Council to amend the zoning bylaw in the way that the province may deem fit to force compliance. So as stated and in conclusion, staff are recommending the proposed amendment be considered for first, second and third on May 27th, and that staff give notice of that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Just two questions. If we move, is there any problem if we move the date to June 3rd? There is a chance some members of Council, including myself, may be absent on the 27th.
Through your worship, really we're in a deadline set by the province. The bill was passed December 7th with a deadline of June 30th. We do require referral to MOTI, the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, should Council give 3 readings June 3rd. To meet the June 30th deadline, that would be the June 24th meeting, which is a 3-week or less than 3-week if we submit the referral on the Tuesday.
Okay,
so
we'll leave that alone.
Problematic.
I understand. One last question. The 2599, I looked through all these properties. Is that privately owned or does the municipality own that property?
Pardon me, Your Worship, which property?
2599 Marine Drive.
I'm afraid I don't have ownership on title in front of me today.
No, that's okay. I'm just curious. It was a very unique lot. That it's an empty lot, which is uncommon, and we have a public right-of-way next to it. I'll turn it over to Councillor Gambioli.
My question is sort of taking a step back, a big picture question, because I've been asked this question and it's not 100% clear to me. We went over it pretty quickly at the beginning, the sort of definition of the restricted zones and, obviously the provincial government has tried to sort of anticipate generally what the zoning is across the whole province, really. And because we zoned most single-family areas to enable coach houses and suites, it looks to me like we've essentially, it's sort of like a loophole to me. I'm going to call it a loophole that perhaps we're unusual. So this is my question. Are we unusual? What's happening in other districts who don't have the same type of zoning that we do for most single-family areas? Because it seems to me that, if we didn't have this, if we didn't pass this fairly recently, then all of our single-family lots would come under the restricted zones and we would be putting 4 units on each lot. And maybe some people are going to be really upset about that because their property could have 4 units on it instead of 3. So I just wonder, to me it seems like there's sort of an unintended loophole that we have found ourselves in one way. How would you characterize it?
Through your worship, I don't think staff would characterise this as a loophole. I mean, we take the legislation in good faith. It is written as it's written. We've confirmed our own interpretation through legal counsel, and it confirms staff's opinion. I believe there are other municipalities, certainly within BC and even in the Lower Mainland, that also currently allow 3 units a lot. Without being in a position of speaking for any other local governments, my understanding is that we won't be alone in maintaining that interpretation of legislation. It is how it's written. It is how we read it. In terms of whether or not homeowners would like to do more, to me, that would be a council decision. Council will certainly hear from planning staff, often recommending missing middle housing. I'm not sure you've ever heard us recommend it everywhere, but should council wish to pursue that direction, then there's nothing that would stop council making that kind of recommendation. But our interpretation, we believe, is sound. I cannot speak to provincial intentions. Obviously, it's their legislation. They could choose to amend it at any time in the future. But we're proceeding in a first part looking for compliance, and as housing conversations continue, as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, there are other housing bills, there will be other targets, growth expectations. I think moving to things like 4 units a lot, perhaps in some areas, will be something that we would consider through things like the OCP review, when we have a better understanding of what our 20-year growth expectations are.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Snyder.
Yes, just to be clear, I think it's very important that everybody understand at this stage the impact that our staff believe this is going to have on the district as general. You mentioned that you believe that it only is going to impact 1.6%. How many lots does that relate to?
Through your worship, I believe it's in the report, and I believe it's 222, but of those, around 45, again by memory, are actually apartment lots, so it's moot, so it's more in the order of 180 lots.
So it's about 180 lots throughout the entire district that this would be. So very good, thank you.
Councillor Watt.
Yeah, boy, I find this provincial legislation to be highly uncomfortable. Are you aware of any other legislation of this sort coming down the pipeline? I think you hinted that there's more coming.
Through your worship to Councillor Watt, yeah, I did want to spend a minute at the presentation. Obviously, I recognise this is a very dense subject matter, just to outline that this is not the only bill related to housing, but this is the one thing in front of Council tonight. But as I did briefly describe, we will be, I believe, at the next council meeting reporting to council on the housing target piece. So that was a separate bill in terms of what is our net growth, and we will continue to do that over the next 4.5 years. By the end of this year, there will also be a new housing needs report. That's directed by the province again, and they did indicate they would provide a methodology for that and the required data we would need to use in early 2024. It's now I guess towards the end of April, we're yet to receive it, so I'm not sure how to interpret early in 2024, but our understanding is we will be given that methodology, and it will lead to a new 20-year growth figure, which will lead to a new OCP to reflect that growth by the end of next year. So they're just some examples, but and there could be new provincial bills. It's obviously nothing local government staff can really comment on or advise on other than what we know at time of speaking.
Thank you.
Won't be any need for us.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Well, where do I start? Well, I start probably by telling you I have absolutely no intentions of voting for this. I realize in the scheme of what's been going on that this is basically a drip in the bucket that we are having to absorb. But at what point in time do you finally put your foot down and say to the province, get a grip on reality? Which thus far I don't think we've said. If you could please refresh the public's memory as to who controls the Upper Levels Highway and the accesses onto the Second Narrows Bridge and the Lions Gate Bridge.
Through your worship, that would be the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.
which would be the province. So if the province and Mr. Eby cares to come from Kitsilano Point to West Vancouver on any average rush hour day, or when somebody is sitting on the Lionsgate Bridge deciding of whether or not they're going to end their life, or one of those Lamborghinis goes speeding across the bridge at 125 miles an hour, or there's just your nominal accident that we have that closes us down, then he would find out that enough is enough. Get a grip on reality. Now, this is a government who decriminalized drugs and now are reversing their policy. So what I actually do think as a community that we need to do is talk to our colleagues in North Vancouver, the city, and the district and say, we need to get together and tell this province the reality of what happens on the North Shore. Currently, we have Rogers Creek, which we have approved, which thus far has not done much, but we have approved those houses. We'll have Cypress Park coming on board. We're having a new local area plan. So as far as I'm concerned, we have done our bit. We have given an inordinate amount of money in our school tax to our provincial government, and we get zippo-pippo back. So if you ask me, I think we should do a Surrey to a woman I much admire, which is Brenda Locke, and tell the province to get a grip on reality. As far as I'm concerned, we need to take a stand. Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Bailey, I'm not directing it at you. I'm just expressing my point of view, and I have absolutely no intentions of voting for this. And you never know, there's a provincial election coming in October, I do believe. I think it's highly unlikely we will see the end of this entity that we call a government, because they're throwing money out right, left, and center to buy votes and have basically never given much back, if anything, to West Vancouver. All they're giving us is a headache, which they're not helping us resolve. We need new methods to get out of this area before we can accept any more that we've already approved, and that's where I stand.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy, and it'll be really interesting this week. Are all members of council going to the local area? Councillor Gambioli, are you going? You're not going? Are you going, Councillor Cassidy? This week there is a convention of all the lower mainland municipal governments, and it'll be really interesting to see whether this occupies a lot of the discussion around the tables. So
This is a government that we didn't elect. This is not an elected government. We elected his predecessor, but not him. So it's time that people start fighting back and just not rolling over and accepting the mandates, because I think that could be an extreme form of socialism bordering on communism. Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
Well, I'll just say that I think it's probably a better idea to be diplomatic with the provincial government than not. So Councillor Cassidy certainly doesn't speak from my point of view on this or any other of the topics she brought up. But my question to our staff would be, what happens if this is not approved by this council by the June 30th deadline, please?
Through your worship to Councillor Gambioli. So for full transparency, obviously we find ourselves with entirely new legislation. There, by definition, has not been any interpretation of this in the judicial meaning of the word, but it's incumbent on staff to advise council of what is in the legislation should council fail to comply in its decision-making. It is specified in Section 787 of the Local Government Act. It's a long act at this point. But the Minister has the right to give us notice as a local government that specifies their objections and states that we must, within 30 days, on receipt of the notice, alter our zoning bylaw accordingly. And then I'll be brief, but it leads to the point that if a local government fails, it could be the minister that establishes, and I'm quoting, the siting, size, dimension, location, or type of housing units required. So it could be that it is the province that actually regulates the kinds of things that staff have made recommendations around in terms of citing on the lot, dimensions and so on. So it's incumbent on me to advise council that those rights are enshrined in the legislation.
So, okay, what you're saying is that if we don't approve what our own staff have analyzed and recommended for us, thank you, by the end of June, that the minister from the province will come in and do it for us.
That is
the risk.
my interpretation of the legislation without it having gone to a court.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to plain language it for, people.
Thank you, Councillor
Okay,
Gambill.
thanks.
As much as many of us will be sympathetic to Councillor Cassidy's comments, I'm afraid we are in a rock and a hard place, and I don't think we want the minister dictating anything to us further. Councillor Watt, and then Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Watt.
You can go ahead if you like. Okay. I just hope that somewhere in this master plan for the province that they do consider that we've got all of Whistler, Pemberton, Squamish that is expanding at warp speed, that they are considering transportation solutions, because it is going to be untenable. It already is.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor Cassidy.
Well, I have said enough on the subject, but I'll just say that they keep threatening dear old Surrey, and she's standing her ground. And thus far, she seems to be winning. So I think that we need to get together as the North Shore and have those strong conversations with MODI as to the fact that we're going to be choking ourselves and cannot get off and cannot get in to our premises called the North Shore. So I'm not going to be voting for it. I'm not going to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. With that discussion, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
I apologize, Mayor Sager. We don't
Sorry.
have a-
Oh, did we not put the motion on the floor? Oh, we didn't. I'm sorry. Councillor Snyder.
And just before I put the motion on the floor, my one last comment is, I do have sympathy for many of the things that Councillor Cassidy does mention and Councillor Watt as well, but I also am concerned about the district moving forward and would hate to see the provincial come in and take over control over our planning department more than it already has. So with that said, I would like to recommend that the proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5327, 2024, be considered for first, second, and third readings at the May 27th, 2024 regular council meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. in Municipal Hall, Council Chambers, and via electronic communication facilities, WebEx video conferencing software, and that notice be given of the scheduled consideration.
Accuser, seconder, Councillor Lambert. Thank you. We've had a lot of discussion.
I'll just note that I won't be here for May 27th, so good luck to all of you if you want to set it for that date.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we did try and move it, but I think Mr. Hawkins is probably correct. We've got to stick with this. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary, Councillor Cassidy, and we'll record that. Carried. We'll move to item number 6. This is, again, the province changing the land use contract rules and requiring us to replace zoning. Councillor Thompson.
I guess I'll defer to Ms. McGuire for doing a presentation before we put it on.
Ms. McGuire, are you going to do a presentation? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. I'll just do a presentation.
Gosh, it's too bad. Before everybody's leaving this evening, I wanted to remind everyone to come tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the opening of the new fitness park in Ambleside. I'll make sure those two are there in the back corner.
You look like trouble.
Ms. McGuire, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. So for consideration tonight are proposed regulations for replacement zoning for the Caulfield land use contract area, and then other bylaw amendments for other land use contract sites across the district. Here's just a brief presentation outline. I'll just give a bit of background and then move on to talk about the Caulfield land use contract and the proposed zoning and other bylaw amendments for that area, and then just finish off with the other proposed amendments for the other 18 of 22 land use contract sites across the district. So the district has 23 existing land use contracts. Those are set to expire based on provincial legislation that I'll speak briefly to on the next slide. In the next couple of months, on June 30th, 2024, similar, it was to the housing legislation, same deadline, in fact, by the province. So for the Caulfield area, we're proposing replacement zoning, and then we have minor amendments to 18 of the other 22 land use contract sites. So as I said, I've just described the provincial legislation. So land use contracts are a planning tool that were used for a relatively brief period of time in the 1970s. They're a legal contractual agreement between local governments and landowners, typically developers seeking to develop specific pieces of land across British Columbia. They allowed for site-specific development, including land use regulations, similar to what you might see in modern zoning, so limitations on density, height, setbacks, landscaping, things like that. And they are registered on title. In 1978, the province repealed the legislation, which meant that no new contracts could be created, but the existing ones remained in place. And then in 2014, the province amended the Local Government Act to terminate all contracts by June 30, 2024. So we have been working on this for a number of years at this point, and Council has done quite a bit of work so far already to date. On May 31st, 2022, Council did adopt bylaws to address 22 of the original 23 land use contract sites. And at that time, due to the complexity and scale of the Caulfield area, directed staff to undertake a separate technical analysis for that land use contract. And then more recently, in February 21st of last year, Council directed staff to prepare replacement zoning for the Caulfield land use contract area. After receiving for information a report that we worked with our planning consultants, Urban Systems, on, that provided a technical review of the Caulfield area. So here you can see a map just showing, showing the Caulfield area plus the 18 of the 22 sites that amendments are proposed for. And just to summarize, we do have 5 different bylaw amendments for Council's consideration tonight. The first one's for the zoning bylaw, the official community plan or OCP bylaw, the tree bylaw, the development procedures bylaw, and finally the fees and charges bylaw. So just moving on to Caulfield, as I said, the area, as Council and residents will know, it's a large area, it's complex and unique. The land use contract itself facilitated long-term area-wide development, operating more like a neighborhood plan than some of the other land use contracts in the district. And it does include a variety of different land uses. That includes a variety of residential land uses, commercial, the commercial site that exists there, and then green spaces throughout the contract area. And in fact included the existing school site at the time of the land use contract when it was brought forward. It includes approximately 700 properties on over 250 acres of land. And the zoning that's there today, the underlying zoning, is a mixture of different single-family zones. So that includes RS10, RS3, and RS2 zoning. So with the technical review that we brought to Council previously, this map is pulled from that. And you can see that based on the available data that we had, we looked at what was built on the sites and then compared it to the existing zoning. And it was identified that over 80%, the vast majority of lots within Caulfield, they don't match the underlying zoning. And so that means they're legally non-conforming, which is an issue for property owners because what it would mean is that potentially they couldn't build back the house or the development that they have there today. And that really underscored the need to do this work. So following from the direction in February of last year, we worked with the local community in Caulfield. We held 2 neighborhood information meetings. They were quite well attended and in fall of last year. And over 110 participants shared their feedback on the high-level replacement zoning options that we had at the time. So that feedback's been fairly consistent throughout the process, with support for legalizing existing development to avoid that situation of legal nonconformity, support to apply the land use contract regulations within the replacement zoning, which would allow for maintaining development rights for property owners across the contract area. There was also support for allowing secondary suites, which aren't currently allowed in the land use contract area. And then there was a lot of comment about the existing greenbelt areas and maintenance of those. with concern about potential tree removals and trimming in the process regarding that, but also concern about the wildfire management of that area. It's not pertinent to the zoning question before Council for Caulfield, but it was one of the areas of feedback that we received. And then finally, there was comment about how neighborhood character could be maintained in the area over time as sites redevelop. So here you can see a map pulled from the draft zoning bylaw. And so what the zoning would do is it would rezone the existing area from the mix of zones that is there now, so that's a mix of RS2, RS3, and RS10, to a new Caulfield's Comprehensive Development, or CD zone. And this map is out of the draft zoning. And so that would include 4 specific land use areas. You can see those colored on the map. 2 residential areas, a commercial area, and an area designating the park and green space area. In terms of the residential area, what the zoning would do is it would ensure legal conformity for the properties across the residential areas, both in terms of site coverage, floor area, setbacks, and height. It will also reflect generally permitted district-wide zoning uses and regulations. So that would include introducing things like secondary suites or home-based businesses or childcare, which are generally permitted in other residential areas. Would also address potential impacts to neighborhood character using introduced setback provisions, as well as bringing forward site coverage and height limitations as currently set out in the land use contract, and would meet the provincial housing legislation that Mr. Hawkins was speaking to for the last item, allowing for a maximum of 3 units per parcel. And that could be done through addition of secondary suites or ground-oriented dwellings. And the reason this was needed, just to focus on that for a second, is that this ensures that the zone that we're creating for Caulfield is not defined as a restricted zone, and therefore is not required to be rezoned further to allow for additional units, if that makes sense. And then finally, in terms of the residential areas, we're proposing a floor area ratio, or FAR, of 0.35. And the reason for that is because for the Caulfield zone, we're proposing to not include coach houses. And the reason for that is to do with the feedback that we received from neighbors, but also due to the topography considerations of Caulfield generally, with such steep slope sites. And so with that, there's also no coach house bonuses or secondary suite floor area bonuses that would be attributable to those sites. So the floor area ratio of 0.35 is similar to other areas in the district that have that same basis where the bonuses are not available. We're also proposing that the greenbelt allocation that exists in Caulfield today, which attributes to your site size, would be applicable to sites going forward. So that would retain those land use contract regulations that essentially allow each site to have a pro-rata share of the adjacent green belts that were dedicated at the time of subdivision. But one thing to note is that we are including a house size maximum, and that's to potentially, it's aligned with other zones in the district that have similar site sizes, but it's intended so that houses don't get extremely large based on their site area and the greenbelt allocation that would be attributable to them. And then for the commercial area, it's much simpler. It basically brings forward the land use contract regulations into the regulations within the draft zoning. And then finally, the parks and green space designation. What that really just does is preserve those areas as was intended through the land use contract for public use and recreation use. And then also coming forward with the zoning bylaw are amendments to the official community plan and the development procedures bylaw. So for the official community plan, what we're proposing to do is place the existing shopping site within the local commercial sites development permit area. That would mean that the form and character guidelines that are applicable to other local commercial sites across the district would be applicable to that commercial site. And then for one thing we're proposing to introduce is a ground-oriented housing development permit area. And that's for the sites that are shown in blue on the map there on the screen. Those sites are existing attached housing units. And one of the concerns was, as those sites turn over, how do we deal with adjacencies when the housing is literally attached to its next door neighbor? How do you deal with privacy, overlook, and adjacency issues? So what we're proposing to do is to create this ground-oriented housing development permit area that would just be applicable to existing attached housing areas. And that would allow us to, for sites that are proposing redevelopment, to review a form and character development permit that really is focused on potential adjacency issues for next door sites. And so that covers the official community plan amendments. The one thing that's coming in concert with that for the development procedures bylaw amendment is we're proposing to delegate those types of form and character development permits for the residential sites to the Director of Planning and Development Services. What that would do is it would streamline the process for homeowners wanting to redevelop so that each development permit doesn't have to come before council, but that can be considered by staff. And then just a quick note that for both of the bylaws, we're also proposing to remove references to land use contracts to align with the provincial legislation. And then just moving on to the other amendments to the 18 of the 22 other land use contract sites. This slide summarizes the proposed amendments. The first batch is the zoning bylaw, and really what these are doing, it looks like a lot of wording, but really what we're proposing to do is basically update the land use, permitted land uses for these to align with the original land use contract regulations, and also to align with district-wide permitted uses. So that includes things like home-based business, childcare, community care that are permitted in other areas of the district, other zones of the district. And then for the fees and charges bylaw amendment, that's really a housekeeping amendment to remove references to the land use contract applications. And then finally, the tree bylaw amendment. This is specific to the Parthenon Place land use contract to update those regulations to be consistent with the land use contract related to tree protection and tree heights. So to conclude, staff are recommending that council give first reading to the bylaws and set the date for public hearing as the proposed amendments meet relevant provincial legislation rather. They're consistent with council's direction to staff. They respond to neighborhood feedback that we received throughout the process. And then for the Caulfield area, they would ensure legal conformity for approximately 700 properties within that neighborhood. And then generally because the amendments provide consistency with land use contract provisions and current bylaws and regulations. So that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Just one thing to note is that we have, upon further review, discovered a handful of technical errors in the zoning bylaw for related to Caulfield. And we have reviewed those, and council can consider the bylaw before you tonight for first reading. They are just technical fixes, and there's just a handful of them. And what we're proposing to do, if council gives first reading to the bylaw, is make those changes and bring a modified bylaw that would be included on the public hearing agenda and for council's consideration for second.
Ms. McGuire, that was a truly outstanding presentation of an incredibly complex issue. And I've got to tell you, in 1978, when I was just beginning to get involved in things in the community, and I remember following and watching this brilliant lawyer in the community who was aptly drafting this legislation, and I can't believe he's sitting here in the chamber tonight, Mr. McIntyre. Unbelievable. Would you have ever dreamt that we'd be sitting here all these years later and looking at writing off all of your work? Quite something. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just start by putting the motion on the table. I don't know if there's any questions, but I don't know if this is considered a friendly amendment or just a request. I appreciate you pointing out that you'll be making a few adjustments to the bylaws. It is so complex, and I'm just starting to really digest it. And I think council needs a workshop with staff to kind of go through these, perhaps even members of the community if they have specific concerns. So I'm wondering if we can either add that as a friendly amendment or as part of the recommendations.
I think the members of the community have had a lot of input on this. I would certainly recommend that we could set aside a manager's workshop to go over this, but we do have deadlines to meet. And the only suggestion on this would, if it doesn't ruin things, I would move this to the June 3rd date so that Councillor Gambioli can be present.
And is it available can we do it on June 3rd?
Any problem with moving the
Sorry, sorry, I didn't know if Mr. Bailey was going to answer. So with the June 3rd date, we have the same issue as the previous bylaw amendments because this also requires MODI approval.
No.
So we are really pretty crunched. And maybe just to speak, Councillor Thompson, to what you were asking about the community, though, I have had a number of meetings following up quite recently, in fact, with some of the key members of the community that have been representing different sort of sub areas within the Caulfield area and have gone over and taken time to really go through the information and describe it in detail and get feedback from them. And that feedback has been generally positive. I had a conversation with Mr. Chapman today and have a meeting scheduled on Wednesday to meet with him and follow up. Looking forward to that as well. I would maybe leave it to Mr. Bailey, Mr. Finley to speak about the workshop for council. I'm happy to do that myself, but.
And through the mayor on a workshop, I mean, we're happy to answer any questions. I think that might be the most sort of useful and effective way to deal with that. Is to, if council has questions, prior to the setting of the date, we'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm happy with that. If the rest of council
Could
is.
we have quite a few motions to get through
Okay.
here,
So I'll recommend that the opportunities for consultation on the proposed official community plan amendment with persons, organizations, and authorities as outlined in April 15th, 2024 report from community planner be endorsed as a sufficient consultation for purposes of the section 475 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Councillor Lambert, thank you. Any discussion? I'll call a question. All in favor? Contrary carried. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
That the proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5301, 2024 be read for the first time.
Thank you. Discussion? Question? All in favor? Contrary carried.
Recommend,
Sorry. There we are. Councillor Thompson.
what's that?
No, it's okay.
Okay, recommend that the proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5321, 2024 be read the first time.
Thank you. Question? All in favor? Contrary carried. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
And recommend that the proposed officially community plan bylaw 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5301, 2024, and proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5321, 2024, be presented at a public hearing on May 27th.
Stick with that.
Yeah, 2024 at 7 p.m. in Municipal Hall, Council Chambers, and via electric communication facilities, WebEx video conference software, and that statutory notice be given as scheduled public hearing.
Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? Question? All in favor? Contrary carried. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Okay, recommend proposed tree bylaw number 4892, 2016, amendment bylaw number 5322, 2024 be read a first time.
Thank you. Question? All in favor? Thank you. Carried.
Recommend that proposed development bylaw 4940, 2017, amendment bylaw number 5318, 2024 be read a first time.
Thank you. Discussion? Question? All in favor? Contrary carried.
Finally, the proposed fees and charges bylaw number 5251, 2023, amendment bylaw number 5319, 2024 be read a first time.
Thank you. Discussion? Question? All in favor? Contrary carried. Again, Ms. McGuire and Mr. Bailey, I'd like to express on behalf of all of us on council our sincere thanks for what it was an enormous task and very well presented. Thank you. We'll move to item number 7. Councillor Gambioli, please.
I will recommend that proposed 2024 annual tax rates bylaw number 5331, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary carried. Thank you. Item number 8. Again, Councillor Gambioli, please.
Yes, this is related to the Salmon House development, which we had for second, third reading a number of weeks ago. So I will start by recommending that the proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5280, 2023 be adopted.
Discussion, question, all in favor, contrary, carried. Thank you.
And that proposed zoning bylaw 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5281, 2023 be adopted.
Discussion, question, all in favor, contrary, carried.
And
Thank you.
that proposed land use contract, development area agreement 1957, discharge bylaw number 5282, 2023 be adopted.
Thank you. Discussion, question, all in favor, contrary, carried. Thank you.
And finally, that the proposed development permit 22-109, which would regulate the form and character of the proposed townhouses, commercial building, and landscaping be approved.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion, question, all in favor, contrary, carried. Thank you. And Councillor Cassidy, please, the proposed regulations on bear spray.
Okay. I recommend that the proposed business license bylaw number 4455, 2005, amendment bylaw number 5329, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Second.
Any discussion? Question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay. I recommend that proposed bylaw notice enforcement bylaw number 4368, 2004, amendment bylaw number 5330, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion, question, all in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you. There's no new business. May we move now to Black Bear conflict response? Councillor Watt.
Yes, there are two speakers here for this, and I'm wondering if we don't want to let them come up ahead of time.
Oh, certainly.
There's a lot of reading here, so I'm thinking
Okay.
it might be worthwhile.
Thank you,
Please.
Mayor Sager. There's actually a third person that signed up for this item. As you know, the council procedure bylaw typically doesn't
we've
allow.
got four now. We've got Mr. Chapman as well.
As you know, the council procedure bylaw typically doesn't allow input on other items, but at your leisure, of course, we can allow it. The names in order that I have are Ellie Lamb, Yvonne Gerard, Neville Abbott, and I don't know who the fourth is yet.
We absolutely want to invite our citizens to offer their thoughts. Thank you for coming. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gambioli.
I just have a question about this item. So there wasn't much explanation, and I'm just confused about the purpose of what we're talking about here. It's not a notice of motion. It says that the resolution from UBCM be supported for the LGLMA consideration. So I don't understand what this means. Does this mean that we're putting this forward as a motion? Does this mean that those of us who are going to LMLGA are supposed to vote for it? I've never seen anything like this.
Thank
Be
you.
required.
Councillor Watt, would you like to speak to that?
I'll be honest, it confused me at first as well. Ellie and Yvonne forwarded the motion to me that was presented and approved by the District of North Vancouver and Lions Bay and perhaps other municipalities, I'm not aware. And the intent and hope is that we will support it at LMLGA. Okay, because usually, we just simply get emails from residents saying, I hope you're going to support this when you go to LMLGA.
Yeah.
So I just don't see the purpose of having this on an agenda right now. Well, why don't we listen to the two presenters, if I may? I'm just concerned that there's, at UBCM, there's, 250 motions, and we can't really spend the time with people who want to discuss every single motion ahead of time before we go at a council meeting. So I just wonder about the, precedent, the process for the future. I think given the community that we live in on the fringes of wilderness, I think it's a highly important issue. I'll just leave it there and listen to
we do
the
have
presentation.
members of the
Thank you.
public that they could speak to us in the question and answer period, so I think, well, let's invite them just to, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Sager and councillors. Nice to be here and great to see everyone again. Yvonne and I are going to do a quick recap on our presentation from a few weeks ago. I'd like to start by addressing the 2023 record high number of black bears that were killed in BC by the British Columbia Conservation Officers Service. These reported statistics show an increasing number of bears killed every year for the last 12 years. Unfortunately, these statistics do not include all bear cubs that have been left to die or let nature take its course. Consider that every mother bear killed, you can include 2 or 3 bear cubs that will not make it without their mother and are not included in the annual statistics. So we know that the reported record high number of bears killed last year is indeed much higher. When the BC COS attend a call and determine that an action is needed on a bear, 9 out of 10 times that action will result in lethal measures. The bear is killed. The BC COS come into our neighborhoods using militarized weapons to manage bear-human interactions. Residents, including children, witness horrific scenes, sometimes involving small cubs shot right out of a tree. This often causes horrific injuries and often death on the bear cubs. Community members are traumatized and have lost faith in the BC Conservation Officers Service, and public trust is indeed broken. There's a groundswell of public sentiment voicing their concerns about the cruel and inhumane ways the bears they know and care for are being treated in and around their communities. Trauma and broken trust with this agency is what we are seeing today. Yvonne will now bring to your attention some recent examples that will highlight the importance of this motion.
Thank you. Tonight, as we speak, we know of a starving orphan cub on a road near Braylorne, BC. Northern Lights Wildlife Society is willing to take her if they can get permission, but unfortunately, they have been continuously denied. When these cubs are not picked up and cared for, it demonstrates astounding reckless cruelty, all witnessed by traumatized community members who really care for these vulnerable, starving, orphaned cubs. However, other cubs have received permission to be picked up. This is the problem. There are too many inconsistencies as to whether a rehabilitation center will receive permissions from the British Columbia Conservation Officers Service to pick up and save these orphan cubs. In a recent news report on April 12th, the incident at the Pitt Meadows Blueberry Field has drawn a lot of attention. DNA evidence conclusively revealed that the woman found deceased in the blueberry field was attacked and killed by dogs, not a bear. Bear traps were seen brought into the area shortly after the woman's death. At the same time, several well-known bears in the area disappeared, and to date, even after this media story was released and the investigation completed, there has been no official comment by the BC Conservation Officer Service. A Freedom of Information request was submitted by a concerned community member about these missing bears, but instead of finding out what happened, 270 blank pages were returned. This lack of transparency and accountability by this publicly funded agency is why we are asking for your support in voting in favor of this motion. If BC conservation officers dress like police, carry militarized weapons, use police-type equipment and vehicles, and are appointed like police, they too should have the same independent oversight as the police do. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have allowed our wildlife to be held in public trust, and now the public is voicing their opinions through social media and the news. Communities are making it clear that they will not support publicly funded cruelty against our bears. Our province is renowned as a world-class bear viewing destination. Is a starving orphan bear cub left dying at the side of a road the image we wish to portray? North Vancouver District Resolution addresses humane treatment of orphan bear cubs, an independent public oversight board with the BC COS, an audit by the Auditor General on the actions, policies, and procedures of the British Columbia Conservation Officer Service. The community of Lions Bay has also recognized the need to support North Vancouver District Resolution and has passed their own motion of support. Tonight, we look forward to West Vancouver District also passing this motion to ensure that this resolution is moved forward with strength to the upcoming LMLGA and UBCM meeting in September. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have to thank you both very, very much for your passion and for bringing this forward to council. I do understand Councillor Gambioli's concerns that this has come up as a notice of motion, which technically means that it's not, no, I'm getting, it's.
I don't, this is not a notice of motion. It has not been provided by a member of council. It was put onto the agenda at the request of the municipal manager.
Oh, I see. Well, that was because the municipal manager received a request from two members of council, so I'm going to take it as a notice of motion. So the problem with that is, of course, it's a notice of motion, which means it would be considered at the next meeting. So I think what we need to do to achieve the goal tonight is to receive, with thanks, the presentation on this subject, and then members of council can make their own commitments that at the Lower Mainland Municipal Association meeting, they'll support this resolution. I think you're going to get the same outcome. It's just we're talking about procedural. I do understand Councillor Gambioli's comments here. Thank you very, very much. Sorry, Councillor Cassidy.
So I'm confused. So Lions Bay has adopted this. North Vancouver District
No,
has
but
adopted.
it would come up. We would be adopting this at our next meeting.
All right. So that is what we are going to do.
But that doesn't do anything for the local for this week.
All right. So
So
that is what we will bring this forward to our next meeting.
We can do that, but it'll be too late. Because really what we're doing is giving a commitment that we support this motion this week at the Lower Mainland Municipal. It achieves the same goal.
So it will achieve the same objective.
Yes.
All right.
Their objective is to have support at the Lower Mainland Municipal Association. And I think the very fact we put it on the agenda tonight will show you that you've got that support.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now, yes, sir, you.
I had signed up to speak.
Yes, please.
No,
No, sir, please. We would ask you to come to the microphone.
And the reason I thought I would just, I'm Neville Abbott. I'm a councillor from Lions Bay.
Oh, there you
So,
go. Well, welcome.
that explains some of this.
Nice to have you here. We'll see you this week at the conference. Then.
Unfortunately, I won't be there.
Oh.
We're a small community, as you know. We tend not to send all members of council. With budget constraints, so we do often send one to represent us. So Jamie Cunliffe, Councillor Cunliffe, will be there. I had some notes prepared to speak to you tonight. They're probably a little redundant now. I hadn't synchronized with Ellie and Yvonne about what we were going to say tonight, so I'll just sort of gloss over it a little bit. But first we'll explain to you what happened at Lions Bay. We took a motion. We took a resolution. The motion was brought to the council chamber on the day. I brought it there because we'd received that very afternoon from the Mayor Little from the District of North Van a letter from him asking us to support this motion at the LMLGA and the UBCM, which was based on the resolution that Councillor Forbes had done in the District of North Van. I guess our procedures are a little more lax than yours, being smaller, so I brought it, I put it on the table that night, and I read it, and it was passed, and the next day we sent a certified resolution to the District of North Van saying that Lions Bay supported them in this. The history and where it goes back to is that when Ellie, I met Ellie a few years ago. I'll tell you a little quick story in a minute about that. A few years about a bear that we rescued in Lions Bay and what it took, and it's very pertinent to why this resolution is going forward. But before I get to that, Ellie introduced me to Betty Forbes, councillor in the District of North Van. And she said to me that, you know, her residents and the community members were often traumatized when there was news of a bear trap and a bear destroyed in the community. It was very traumatizing for people. That resonated with me because last year in Lions Bay, there was a bear shot in the evening one night, gunshots ringing out in the village. And there were a lot of people who were traumatized by that. And I'm chair of the BESWAS committee there as well. And we had new people come to join us and wanted to have the same, say things about that. So I resonated with that, and then she mentioned to me, wouldn't it be nice if all of the North Shore municipalities could do this together? So this is where you get into your procedural problems. All of the North Shore municipalities don't have an entity to put one motion forward, but they can support each other, so that's how this came about to the way it's being presented at the moment. The personal story about the rescue in Lions Bay that I wanted to tell you it's probably not going to help you clear up in your mind how all of this works, but hopefully it's going to explain to you why we believe it's important that that there is a review of how the Conservation Office services work.
That's time, sir.
I'll be really.
That's fine. Carry on.
Okay, I'll be brief with the story then. December 2022, there was a bear cub of the year, which, if you don't know, that's the bear that's just come out that year with its mother and would typically go bed then with its mother again, was wandering around the village on its own. So it was known to be an orphan, obviously. There'd been an accident on the highway. We assumed the mother died in the accident on the highway. I reached out to the Conservation Office Services. Lion Bay is one of only 11 Bear Smart communities in BC, and that's a distinction given, or a recognition given to us by the Conservation Office Services. So we typically work with them. I reached out to the Conservation Office Services. Criticare had agreed to take the cub. They came out with a trap. They didn't trap the cub that first night, and they took the trap away because they were concerned that they didn't have enough information about where this cub was. A week later, we had daily sightings of this cub, and the entire community was involved. I called Conservation Office Services again, and they said, we cannot come trap the cub for you. I said, why not? They said to me, because we can issue the permits only what they call Walrus, which is the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, can issue permits for them to capture a cub to take it to Criticare. They have ultimate powers to take other actions, but they can't rescue a cub. This is when Ellie Lamb contacted me. She'd found out about it, and she spoke me through and told me what it was all about. We lobbied everyone who knew someone who might know someone who could have known someone, and about 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, at the point where the residents in Lions Bay were about to go vigilante and do something themselves, Criticare got a permit, but it took a lot to do, and it became very close to either that bear being left to die in the forest or underneath someone's house, and a bad outcome. So we had a good outcome. Those good outcomes are not that common, as you heard tonight, because of the clumsiness, the cumbersomeness of the conservation officer being allowed to capture a bear cub and take it to a place like Criticare, those organisations are always willing to take care of it. So I think it's important that this review is done, and that as a minimum, there's new procedures put in place in the Conservation Office Services that mean if they do find a cub of the year, they put it in a crate and take it to Criticare immediately without having to go through all these steps.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
Mayor and Council, I live in West Vancouver. I also have another property in the GBRD, and I took a photo yesterday, which I sent to Pascal. I doubt that you can grab it off your phone and put it up on the screen. Yeah, okay. Yesterday, I saw a cinnamon black bear cub about 40 pounds with its mom, which you don't see very often, the cinnamon bear, because it's have a picture here, you can look later. And a block later, I saw another mother with 3 cubs. And so my wife would kill me if I didn't mention to you the concern we have with the number of cubs that die within a half mile of our property because of this foolish world. And Sandy's attitude is that we're killing the wrong person when we kill the cub. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. It's good to see you this evening. Just going back to this, I understand. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chu, either the municipal manager or the mayor can add an item under other business.
That is correct, which is different from a notice of motion,
Right.
but correct.
Right, and I understand. So this was added because it's useless if it's discussed a week from now. And so it is properly before us if it's been added by the municipal manager. Sorry, Mr. Finlay?
Oh, nothing to add, Mayor, other than I was slightly confused, but I think I'll defer to whatever Mr. Cook says is the proper process on it. I thought it was a topic that, yes, was brought up by two councillors, but authorized by yourself to add.
Yes. Yes. So I don't see any harm if this is up to members of council. I think the motion can go ahead if you want. Councillor Watt?
So I would like to recommend that the Union of British Columbia Municipalities resolution regarding black bear cub conflict response by British Columbia Conservation Officer Service be supported for Lower Mainland Government Association considerations as follows. Whereas the British Columbia Conservation Officer Service currently can independently decide how to handle black bears and cubs in conflict situations without the oversight of an independent external public board, and whereas there is no mandate for orphan black bear cubs to be taken to a wildlife sanctuary for health assessment and treatment by a qualified wildlife veterinarian, and be the sole authority to perform a humane euthanasia of black bear cubs if needed. Therefore, be it resolved that the Union of British Columbia Municipalities request the Province of British Columbia to initiate changes to the British Columbia Conservation Officer Service human black bear single conflict response guideline to include a review of actions through an independent civilian-led oversight board. Orphaned bear cubs be transported to a wildlife sanctuary for health assessment of cubs by qualified wildlife veterinarian for treatment or euthanasia, and an audit done by the Solicitor General of British Columbia Conservation Officer Service actions, policies, and procedures.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy. Okay. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item number 12. As many members of the community will have heard, the provincial government has changed the police board compositions. It has historically, for literally decades, been the responsibility of the mayor to chair the police boards. And the province, in their wisdom, has decided to change that rule. I'm not one of the mayors that is in favor of the change, but I respect that the province has the ability to do that. And so I think we may as well take the opportunity to have other members of council serve on the police board and experience what it's like. And I have recommended that Councillor Cassidy be appointed to the police board. It would take effect immediately as the legislation has just changed. Councillor Watt, if you're in agreement, could I have a motion to that effect?
Yes, I am in agreement. I think you'll be fantastic. Sorry you won't be there. But anyway, I would like to recommend that Councillor Cassidy be appointed to the West Vancouver Police Board effective immediately.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
I'll second that.
Second that. Thank you. Councillor Gambioli?
So just a question, because it's, a last minute addition to the agenda. I think that, there will be some public interest in this issue. And I just wonder if we shouldn't be explaining why we're recommending, why you're recommending Councillor Cassidy, and how we anticipate this would shake down. You just said that there would be different councillors. So there's
Well,
no
I just-
time, there's no information here on terms of time, term, what's recommended? There's nothing here.
Well, the legislation just was passed. It was just brought into effect.
Yep.
And I think it's, Councillor Cassidy has expressed a lot of interest in policing in our community. And so I thought if we're going to ask other members of council to participate and learn how the organization works, that she should go first. And there'll be an annual appointment, as we do every year. We'll review all of the council appointments to different committees and reallocate the work amongst ourselves. And there we go. Councillor Cassidy.
Well, thank you. I very much appreciate the appointment. But I'd also like to say to all members of the public, please attend those police board meetings, because your input as to how the police force moves forward in the work that it's doing in this community is important. And policing is a proactive business. If they do not hear from their residents, from the entity that they're mandated to protect, then they are basically on their own resources. So please, the police board needs to hear from you. I would like to see you there. I'd like to hear what the public has to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should just say that the current composition of the police board, there are 7 members, 5 of whom are appointed by the province. I don't recall what it used to be, but I don't recall the province having 5 appointments in the past. Mr. Finley, do you recall? When I served it before, I think there were many more locally appointed people.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, even though I was in the police department for 30 years, I don't actually recall the maximum number that were appointed by the province. It could very well have been at 1.4 and increased to 5, but I don't have that right now in terms of.
I think it was a more balanced appointment previously. Councillor Gambioli.
Okay, so sorry to belabor the point, but should we not amend the motion then to say the appointment to the police board effective immediately until December 31st, just to be clear?
I think that's a friendly amendment. That is the intent.
By December 31st?
Well, it's their annual appointments.
And I just don't want to mislead anybody, but my impression from our previous mayor, 2 mayors ago, was that most of the police board meetings actually happen in camera.
No.
So I wouldn't want to mislead anybody, or at least perhaps they did in the day, because I was always saying, well, what's going on at the police board meeting? And the mayor always said, I can't tell you because we spend all our time in camera meetings. So I don't want to mislead the public and invite them to the meetings if they're not going to be able to listen. So has that changed a lot?
Councillor Gambioli,
for some reason?
most of the meetings are conducted in public. And I would concur with Councillor Cassidy's recommendation.
Sure.
It is a public meeting and
Right, I just wouldn't want people to show up if they're then going to have to leave. So
no.
what's changed then?
I've never, 30 years ago when I did the job, they were public. I mean, there's some personnel issues that
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Gambioli. They're all public. They're once a month. I believe now they're every 3rd Wednesday, if I'm correct, at 4 o'clock. They're in the Raven Room of the hall. And then after the public session, there is a closed meeting that could follow.
But it would be, there's no reason why members of the community, and I think Councillor Cassidy's suggestion that other members of council attend from time to time is an excellent one. Councillor Watt, and then Councillor. No?
I think I'm
You've spoken. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Well, actually, it's been confirmed, but I had recently reached out to Chief Constable John Lowe to see if I could take a group of youth to the meeting, and his response is regular board meetings are open to the public, so feel free to attend any date with the Youth Advisory Committee.
Yeah. No, I think it's an important organization and deserves our attention and support. So, and could I have that as So I think the proper motion should be that Councillor Cassidy be appointed to the West Vancouver Police Board effective immediately for this calendar year.
If the mover and seconder agree to the friendly amendment?
Yep. Moved and seconded. Okay. Okay, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Contrary? Thank you again, Councillor Cassidy. And then we'll have reports from Mayor and Council, and maybe Councillor Cassidy would like to start on that.
Well, Councillor Cassidy would. So, Councillor Cassidy attended the police board meeting last week, and part of the meeting dealt with the fact that 5 officers were receiving commendations. So often when we think of the police, not me, but perhaps other people, they tend to think of the police when they're on the other side of the equation, which is the wrong side of the equation, which again is not me. So we don't look at the other side of what policing does, and one of the two officers initially who received a commendation, they did so because they were successful in talking a young man down off of the Lionsgate Bridge. So that was the first 2, and when they took that individual to the Lionsgate Hospital, he said, "Thank you." And the second commendation was for 3 officers, and what they had done is they had gone to Park Royal to arrest a shoplifter, and they were successful in arresting the shoplifter, but the shoplifter informed him that he had just ingested a significant amount of contraband, and he then promptly collapsed on the floor. So courtesy of the work done by those 3 officers who ultimately did deliver him to Lionsgate Hospital as well, that individual lived for another day. So as I said, although frequently we fear being stopped for speeding and all those other little issues, we have to think of all the good that our police department does within this community. And yes, so thank you on that one. And as pretty much everybody in the community now knows, I am the liaison to the wastewater committee, the liquid waste, and they are currently, if you're listening to any of the major radio stations, they are currently running a campaign, and the campaign essentially tells the individual, particularly young men of a certain age bracket, sort of 18 to 30, that nothing goes down the toilet except what Mother Nature intended. So please, your dental floss or all your other bric-a-brac that you might think of putting down that toilet, please don't do so, because at the end of the day, the taxpayer is going to be paying the bill to fix those sewer lines, and not good. So my second point also around that subject is that baby wipes do not go down the toilet. They go down into your garbage can. And they're now marketing baby wipes, which are called flushables. In point of fact, that is not the case. They are not flushables. Keep them in your garbage can. And another thing to remind people is we are a soft water community. So when you go to do your washing of your laundry, please do so in cold water, because hot water breaks down the microfibers in polyesters, and that ends up in your ocean. And also you do not need to use the same amount of detergent that is on that little container or your little wipe, squares. If you're environmentally friendly, just use half, you know what I'm referring to, half the square, because anything that we're putting in our water that cannot be extracted is ending up in our oceans. And as we spent this evening talking so much about the environment, it is so simple for us to do what we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. You really should start a YouTube channel. You've changed my laundry habits. I'm cut my soap down by a lot.
So in the last council meeting, I'm sorry if I have to say this, Councillor Gambioli, because I got a great kick out of it. It was to do with the toilet. If it's yellow, it's mellow, and you don't flush it. Remember that? got that. And you know what? I've told that to so many people. But in my house, seriously, it's like an internment camp for recycling. If you take your garbage bag from under your sink or wherever you have it, line your main garbage bag with a large one, you then take your one from in the house and you put it in your larger bag. So you do not have the same use of plastics on an ongoing basis. So I have many more tales that I could tell you, but it's late at night and you have better things to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, my garbage day is tomorrow. When is yours? Maybe I'll come round and see how you do it. But that's not why I took the mic. This morning, while I was taking my little dog for a walk, I came across the most depressing scene, which were the jaws of a crane. I guess, what would it be? No,
a house coming down.
Yes, a house coming down. Wasteful. Yeah, and as I watched the jaws ripping the house apart, I thought back to the Jimmy Pattison house that was deconstructed. And it was such a depressing start to the day, looking at the valuable wood and other materials just being destroyed and going to landfill. So I just want to remind people, if you are in that position where you are redeveloping, please consider deconstruction of your home.
Thanks, Councillor Watt. Could I have a motion to receive the reports, Councillor Lambert, from our colleagues?
Yes, Mayor Sager, I recommend that the oral reports from the mayor and councillors be received for information.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder? Question, all in favor? Contrary, carried. Could I have any member of the public wish to address council tonight?
Yes, Mayor Sager, we have one member of the public who has signed up for this, item 14. Mayor Sager, I'm obligated to let, by turning my mic off, that this member of the public did previously sign up to speak to item 5, which was about the small-scale multi-unit housing item. My understanding from planning staff is that in addition to not being allowed to hold a public hearing on the topic, we're not allowed to receive public input on the matter either. That's my understanding of the legislation. So I would just request that Ms. Heather Mercy not address that topic if she so wishes to speak.
Ms. Mercy, that's true. We had to address it before. Can you maybe call tomorrow? Thank you. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Cassidy.
It is recommended that the April 29, 2024 council meeting be adjourned.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Second. Question, all in favor? Contrary, carried. Thanks for joining us this evening. Thanks for your input and patience. See you soon.